All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another week of Wrestling with Wrestling. I'm Steve, as always, joined by my co-host, the great Doc Gregory,
That's
who
me, baby.
who not only spent the weekend watching wrestling, but actually worked a little, right? You had a show on Saturday. You
Yes, I
refereed the Elite Pro show.
yeah, the Elite Pro Wrestling Alliance show was great. Best match of the night was a ladder match for the Elite Cruiserweight title, which was between Shane Malice and Mr. Excellence
Yeah.
Brandon Scott. Oh my God, that to me they turned it up a notch at night for that title because the fans themselves, are screaming that that was the best match of the night. There was this element of danger because the ladder they were using for that match was the only ladder they had in the whole building. So they could not. Yeah, it's like it's a ladder match. You know that ladder is going to be used as a weapon somewhere through the match. That's kind of just par for the course. Uh, but there was a backdrop that happened during the match, and Brandon Scott got sent through the ladder, and at that point it got bent right the fucking
Oh,
half. And I thought, oh my God, there goes this match, because it's like they've already broken the ladder. There's no way they're going to be able to use that thing to climb up to get that belt. But Shane Malice got out. We stomped it out flat, like I don't know how many times. There was metal over the ring from this match, from this ladder, just kind of disintegrating in front of our eyes.
oh,
And I think that's really what brought to it an element of danger, and because there was real danger involved in this match. Would that ladder actually sustain enough pressure? When the two are fighting on it, it's already broken. And it went over very well. Absolutely the best match of the night. If you haven't caught a live Elite Pro Wrestling Alliance show, we have one at March 22nd. It's called War Games. We have two rings. If you've seen the old WCW War Games, this is what we're kind of branching our style off of. We have two rings side by side, surrounded in a huge steel cage. There are two different 5 versus 5 teams going on. They're going to be fighting in these cages. I'm telling you, we have Shane Douglas coming up. We have Zema Ion coming up. And it is insane the talent that is coming into this war game. So it's going to be a huge show. But without me actually tooting my own horn for what I do for a living, let's move on from here.
yeah. Well, yeah, because we have a lot of wrestling to talk about. We might actually go a little bit long today because there's just so much shit to get to. We try to keep it to an hour, but I get the feeling we're going to spill over a little bit. So bear with us. Over the weekend was the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, and the first thing to say about that is we gave our predictions for those match results last week. We called 7 of the 8 matches that they wound up having. They added the Divas match later, so we didn't predict those. But of the 7 matches they had announced when we started our show last week, uh, Doc, my friend, you got 6 out of 7 right. I only got 4 out of 7 right, and actually, all of the results that we disagreed on, the only one that I got right was the main event. All the other ones that we disagreed on, you called the right way. So well done as far as the predictions go, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. The only reason I called the main event really the way I did, I mean, I kind of knew the mindset of the WWE and the way they would be going with this way because I already know kind of the inside story of what they want to do for WrestleMania. So that's how I base my predictions. I have an inside source, but for the reason that the fans are voting that way, really, is that's why I went with the main event with Daniel Bryan or Antonio Cesaro because that's really where the fans are going, and at a moment's notice, you never know where the WWE is going to go with that. So
Yeah.
I took the rest of them as that's the way I see it going because they have no really stock in that. They want to continue with the way that's building. But the main event, you never know because like I said, at a moment's notice, they may want to trick the fans and just switch. So that's
Right.
why I voted the way I did. I didn't think I kind of felt that Randy Orton would win, but I was hoping that WWE actually reached out and said, all right, let's just, do that Bret Hart versus Ric Flair match, where nobody saw it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. and just pull the trigger on something, you know. Even though they should have pulled the trigger on it like 5 months ago, but you know, people still were hot for it. So we'll talk about Elimination Chamber. I want to talk mostly about the 6-man tag and then the chamber match, because I think those are clearly the two outstanding matches on the show. But I'll just run through the results here really quickly. The pre-show match was the Rhodes Brothers versus Axel and Ryback, who had Larry the Axe come out with them, which was pretty cool. Curtis Axel's grandfather, the great Larry the Axe Hennig, father of Kurt Hennig. And the Rhodes Brothers won that match. Then we went to the first match of the actual pay-per-view show, and that was the Intercontinental title match, Big E versus Swagger. Big E went over there, kept the title. The tag titles match, the Outlaws beat the Usos again. Titus O'Neil beat Darren Young. Obviously, everybody knew that was going to happen.
Yep.
Then there was that amazing 6-man tag with the Wyatts and the Shield that I want to talk about more in depth here in a second. But the Wyatts won that match. They added a Divas title match between AJ and Cameron. Cameron won by disqualification when.
I'm sorry.
Batista beat Alberto Del Rio in a really, for a match of that caliber, a really short match. You got the feeling that they just wanted to get out of there because the fans were not digging that one at all because of Batista. And then there was the Elimination Chamber match, the main event, where Randy Orton beat... He won the match ultimately by pinning Daniel Bryan. Bryan was the last one eliminated. So Orton defends the title in the chamber and now is officially, according to the way things are booked at the moment, is going to face Batista in the main event of WrestleMania. So that being said, let's back up and talk about the Wyatts versus the Shield, because my God, I was looking forward to that match more than any of the other matches announced for the show, and boy, it did not disappoint. That was one of the best. I think that was the match of the year so far. I know it's early, it's only in February, but god damn, that was an amazing match.
Yeah, it was absolutely phenomenal. You're talking about guys who trained up in NXT before they came to the main roster, and it's like these guys time and time again are proving that they are in fact the future. It's like, and you can actually give credit to WWE because there are people back in NXT that have not made the main cut yet, and almost every single one of them, you know, they've had a few fallouts with Fandango, but for the most part, they've hit it out of the fucking park with people that come from NXT. These guys are being trained up right, and the fans are solidly getting behind them. And you're talking about people like the Shield and the Wyatt family. These guys all cut their teeth in NXT. Oh my God! I mean, that was top-notch freaking talent in the ring. You know, it was something I could not take my eyes off of. For the most part, the pay-per-view's playing, but I'm still kind of roaming around online, doing stuff on like that, and letting it play in the background. Because, you know, all I got to do is really hear a match, and I kind of know what's going on. When the announcers kind of get uppity, that's when I turn my head and go, "Oh, what's happening?"
Right.
You know, that's a high spot. But yeah, absolutely, my hat's off to those guys for bringing us probably the best match of the night during that pay-per-view. I'm kind of glad though that it is considered their last very expensive pay-per-view ever, hopefully, because now we get everything for a monthly price, but I think it's well worth it, and we'll get into that later. But Bray Wyatt, he's on the fast track to being a superstar, and I posted this in my new group. Yeah, I posted this in my new group that I just created yesterday called the WWE Network fans, that Bo Dallas may be a champion, but Bray Wyatt is a legend. He will be a legend. The fact that he can work a great match and cut a great promo, which I hear he writes his own promos, and I don't know if that's true. That's purely speculation from this point. Right. But if that is true, that man is on the fast track to superstardom, and I hope that is true. Roman Reigns, that's another story. We'll see how that plays out. But he did prove himself to me a little bit more on Raw this past week with his match with Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of Bray and that gimmick, I had always sort of assumed because he started out as Husky Harris and then he kind of got repackaged into the Wyatt family thing. I always sort of assumed that that was just another gimmick that creative came up with. But I listened to John Cena on Steve Austin's podcast last week, and if any of you guys watching, if you don't listen to Steve Austin's podcast, just generally, if you have time to do it, I would highly recommend it, especially when he has wrestlers on, which he has a lot. Because he interviewed John Cena for one of last week's podcasts, and that was such a great interview, and really let you see like a different side of Cena, and he really got to show like he does get it. He is really smart for the business. He does have a good head on his shoulders, and he has a lot of interesting things to say. And one of the things he said that really perked my interest was when he talked about. They were talking about NXT, and Cena actually said, and if you sort of listen to what he said and draw some inferences, apparently that Bray Wyatt thing was his idea, was Husky Harris's idea, Wyndham Rotundo's idea. Like he realized the Husky Harris gimmick wasn't working, and he went himself to creative or to Triple H or to Vince or to somebody and said, look, I have this idea. What do you think of this? And so the Bray Wyatt thing is actually just as much him as it is anybody else. And if he is coming up with his own promos, that's incredible because those Bray Wyatt promos have just gotten better and better and better. I mean, every time he's just so great with that gimmick. And he brings it in the ring, too. I mean, that match, the great thing about that match to me was, like you say, it's all young guys. It's all NXT guys. And yes, and like Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose have been around for a while. They've worked the indies and stuff. They're really solid hands who knew what they were doing before they ever got to WWE, but they came up through NXT, 6 young guys, new guys, and that match was so old school. That was like a classic, like 1980s, territorial tag team match. I mean, it was like basic fundamental tag team wrestling. And what was really awesome about it to me was because both teams are ostensibly heels. You got sort of, instead of the standard tag team formula of the baby faces start off hot and then the heels take over and dominate and then the baby faces come back, they kind of took turns doing that. There was a heat segment where like the Wyatts would beat up on Dean Ambrose for a while, and then Ambrose would get the tag, and then the Shield would take back over, and then they would do the same thing to the Wyatts. It went back and forth with each team sort of, putting the heat segment on the other guy. And it made it feel different. It wasn't like because as a wrestling fan, like a really solid formula tag team match can still be amazing. I mean, that's one thing about wrestling is even if you do it and you can predict exactly what's going to happen, if the guys in there know what they're doing and it's really well performed, it can still be incredibly exciting. But this Shield versus Wyatt's match, because it was 2 heel teams, they really were able to change up that formula and make it into something that even just in terms of how the match was laid out, it just felt different and, special from another sort of tag team match that they might have had if it was one babyface team versus one heel team.
Right.
And it was such a great match. I mean, after that match, I thought, man, the 6 guys who have to do the chamber now must be sweating balls because like how do you possibly top that match? It's such I can't describe how great I thought that match was.
Yeah, the thing about the chamber is it's great to see, but it does limit a wrestler's capability. I mean, the thing about the chamber though, it is nice because you do have full access to the ring that is surrounding it, instead of like a steel cage where you can't really. It's hard to go off the top rope. You really will just have to go off the top of the cage. But
right.
But in an elimination chamber, the ring is still intact. You can use it to full capability. But there's still limitations to it. You can't really go outside the ring and anything like that. Do kind of the flashy stuff. So yeah, I love that match. It probably was indeed the best match of the night. But the most important thing to think about is, will IRS give tax deductions to Bray Wyatt for his Hawaiian shirts? I'm not sure.
they are a business expense. You would think. If he saved his receipts. Yeah, the Wyatt family, like Bray is just terrific, and that match was amazing. So then let's talk about the main event. I also thought that was a good match.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just talked about like some of the positives and the negatives of the Elimination Chamber as a gimmick. Not every Elimination Chamber match has been great, but most of them have been pretty good throughout down the years. You know, I think it's good now that they're only having one, because for the last couple of years they've had like 2 per show. There will be 2 Elimination Chamber matches on every Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, and that kind of killed it. I mean, it would be almost like if they did the Great American Bash back in the day and they had like 2 War Games matches on the same show. Mm. It's like, oh God. I mean, I love it and everything, but come on, I don't need to see this twice in a row.
The only thing they can get away with that is Survivor Series, which you fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so the Elimination Chamber match on Sunday was, I thought it was a good match. There were, I mean, as a bitchy wrestling fan, I can always get into like armchair booking and be like, well, I would have done this and I would have done this. At the end of the day, it was a good match, and the only thing I really have a problem with is the finish. And the finish that I don't get, here's what I didn't like about the finish, Doc, and I'll see if you agree with me or what you think about it. What I really didn't like about the finish was, because I expected Orton to win. I hoped that they would go with Bryan just as a fan, but I expected Orton to win, so that wasn't a surprise. But when they had Bryan kick out of the RKO and give the live crowd like that hope that like, oh my God, he kicked out of the RKO, and then he lost to another RKO like 2 minutes later, that really got on my nerves, because I was like, he kicks out of the RKO and it's almost like, oh holy shit, like, is he actually going to win this match? And then it's like, nope, haha, got ya. You know, and they redid. It's like Kane interferes. He hits Bryan. Bryan gets RKO'd. He kicks out. Kane hits him again. He gets RKO'd again, and he loses. It's like, oh, come on. If you're gonna, you know that the fans aren't gonna like the finish. You know that they're gonna boo Orton out of the building when he wins, which he's a heel. That's fine. But to do it that way, to basically give the people the finger and make it look like you're going to put their guy over and then have him lose anyway, that just really got on my nerves. And I thought, what the fuck can you people be thinking? You know, you're on thin ice with these crowds as it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, you know, obviously Triple H wants his WrestleMania moment, you know, as secure as he is in the company of WWE, he still wants his WrestleMania moment. And I don't know what the plans were. I heard that possibly CM Punk would be wrestling him, but we know where that kind of goes from there. And so I think that Daniel Bryan was the next best choice, although I don't know why. So I think that the whole thing with Kane interfering kind of just plays out to the long story where they want to go with that. With Daniel Bryan, and it's always that story in professional wrestling, like that you know, that immoral victory. Like, you should have won, but for some reason you didn't. But it's a moral victory that you should have won. And I think that's what they gave Daniel Bryan that night, just a moral victory. You're almost there. You're almost there. But we're just going to snatch it away from you again because you're going to be thrown into this storyline for WrestleMania.
Yeah, and the thing that I thought was a bad sign too. I mean, you see, after the finish of the Chamber match, one thing that struck me was how they shot the disappointed fans. Like, they went out of their way to make sure that we saw the disappointed fans in the stands. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, well, that didn't happen by accident, you know. So clearly they're working something. I mean, if they didn't want to show how pissed off the audience was, they wouldn't keep showing us the audience. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, well, maybe something's going to happen with this, you know. And apparently, what's going to happen is they're going to do Bryan versus Triple H, which again is not the match people want to see.
Right.
People want Bryan to win the title and be in the main event. They don't want him to wrestle Triple H. They don't want him to wrestle Kane. They don't want him to wrestle The Undertaker. They want him to be in the main event and for the show to end with Bryan holding up the title and going, yes, yes, yes. That's what people want.
Yeah, you have literally, WWE, you have literally betrayed the fans, as in what they want to see. Batista, yeah, he's a good guy. Cesaro, yeah, he's a bad guy. Roman Reigns, yes, he's a bad guy. But for some reason, the fans are just bucking against you. Why? Because in the first time in freaking wrestling history, and it's never been heard of before, the fans have turned heel against the idea that is being thrown around by the WWE. And that, to me, is unprecedented and impressive.
Yeah.
So I'm actually more interested. I'm actually more invested and interested in where the fans are going to be pushing this. You know, I'm listening to Raw, watching great matches, but for some reason, for the first time, I'm intently listening to the audience. You know, yeah, they've become part of the show. It's unprecedented.
And you know, someone wrote on a wrestling blog yesterday or today, I can't remember. I was looking over some things, and he said, you know, the best part about WrestleMania being included in your network subscription and basically just getting the show for free along with everything else is that you can watch the show and you can watch like 70,000 people take a shit on Randy Orton versus Batista in the main event and feel like you're not getting ripped off because you didn't have to pay, you know, $60 to see the show. You just get it along with your subscription. So you can sit there and, yeah, you'll be pissed off as a wrestling fan going, oh, my God, what are they doing? But at least you can have like some schadenfreude and be like, ah, ha, ha, ha. I wonder what Vince is doing now, you know, when the audience of his biggest show of the year is, you know, completely rejecting the main event. Again, I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, if anything from the last couple of months, if I've learned anything, it's that even though the audience, like you say, the audience has sort of turned heel on the promotion, when they get something that they like, they are behind it 100%. I mean, they were all over that Wyatt's Shield match at the Elimination Chamber. They were crazy for that match. When Hogan came back on Raw last night, I mean, they were chanting Hogan, Hogan, Hogan.
Yeah, I was giddy too. I was giddy too for that, so I'm guilty.
These are the same. These are the same fans. You know, you can't. It's like after that Hogan segment on Raw, which we'll get to in more detail in a second. But I just to make this point. Once you have that crowd for Raw where they're chanting for Hulk Hogan like people did back in 1985, and they're also chanting for Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, you can't say, well, it's just a few fans, you know, like the WWE, like they've sort of suggested in the past with the yes chants and the Daniel Bryan thing. Oh, that's just the internet fans. You know, the John Cena fans don't care. The people who buy merchandise don't care. You can't say that anymore. You can't really believe that when you go to a live show, and if you give them something they like, and they will cheer their asses off for it. They're not just bitter and cynical and just, you know, not liking whatever you have just to be contrary. You give them what they want. You give them something that's good that they like, and they'll be all over it. They'll respond exactly the way you want them to respond. They'll cheer for the good guys and they'll boo the heels, and you know it'll be just the way you wish it would be. But if you give them something that they don't like, because see that's the difference. When you say they turn heel on the show, they're not angry at Triple H, the character. They're not angry that Daniel Bryan, the wrestling character, has been screwed over. They don't like the show. You know, they don't want to see Daniel Bryan get revenge on Triple H, the evil boss who wronged him. They don't like what they're seeing in the show. It's not about like playing along with, oh, you know, Triple H, that awful boss, you know, and Daniel Bryan, the underdog, you know. They're just like, no, stop. We don't like the way you're booking the show. It has nothing to do with who's the good guy and who's the bad guy and old Randy Orton screwed him over. No, stop. We don't care. We want Bryan to be the guy. That's it. You know? And you're right. I don't remember any other time where it's been like this, where the fans aren't booing because a heel did something bad. They're booing because they don't like the show that is being presented to them. You know, it's just full stop, period. We don't want this, you know.
Right.
And that hasn't happened before, at least not to this level. And boy, it's going to be. I mean, if they really do end up going as it looks like they're going to, with Orton versus Batista as the main event, I mean, I don't know. Do they? It's hard to imagine how that turns out good, like, because if they put that on last, as you would imagine they would, I mean, the show's going to end with the crowd thumbs down, booing the thing out of the building.
Yeah, not giving a rat's ass about how it ended because they don't care about either one. You know, if Randy wins it, woo! You know, it's the same as the Norm. If Batista wins it, they're going to be really disappointed because what the fuck does he deserve?
Right.
Really, honestly, that's why they're booing the shit out of him.
Yeah, and I had the thought earlier today. I thought, well, maybe they don't put that match on last. But then I thought, well, then what the fuck is the point? You know, of even having the match? Like, they unify the titles and they tell the fans, oh, this is the most important thing that's ever happened. You know, they unified the WWE World Heavyweight title. This is huge. And then Batista wins the Royal Rumble and he gets the one shot at WrestleMania at the one big belt. You know, and then they put that match on on fourth, you know, so they can put like the Undertaker match in the main event and send the fans home happy. It's like they're not going to do that. They couldn't possibly be thinking of doing that.
Yeah, at this point, I'm more interested in the Undertaker match.
Oh, me too.
Even though I'm not interested in the Undertaker match.
Yeah, I know. I feel exactly the same way. It's like, I mean, and you know what? Honestly, like if they do go with Bryan versus Triple H, I mean, I'm sure that'll be a good match.
Sure.
Because Triple H has always been a good wrestler, and even at his age and in his semi-retirement, he's shown that he can put on a good match when he has to, and Bryan can have a good match with anybody.
Sure.
I'm sure that'll be a great match, and the crowd, even though that's not the match they want to see, the crowd will be crazy hot for that match. And then if Triple H wins, they'll tear the building down. But I'm sure it'll be a great match, you know. But it's like, why can't you just give people the match that they obviously want? I mean, like, did you see Mick Foley's Facebook post about it?
Oh yeah. He wrote a letter. He wrote a letter to WWE about all that. So yeah, I did read that. It's a couple of days ago, so I'm not really fresh on it. But yeah, I saw it on. I actually am subscribed to the WWE or the Wrestling Inc.com network, which reports on all this stuff as reputable as it is. But every now and again, they hit something from someone who is, you know, at least legit when they're posting stuff, because they'll post stuff that's like on Twitter or everything, someone that has commented on it, and I've seen the letters that Mick Foley has written to the WWE, and it's just out loud, but yeah, he's got some points there, and I agree with Mick Foley. He's got a good mind for the business, and but you know, I mean, what can you say? The WWE's going to do what they want to do. Yeah,
clearly.
And if you, it's like crack. If you're addicted to crack, you're going to keep coming back for crack. If you get bad crack, you're going to still come back for crack. It's just the beast. If you're addicted to wrestling, they know that you're going to keep coming back for more until they finally give you what you want. And I truly think that it is coming. It's just they're sitting on their fucking ass about it.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, you're right, and it's a shame that it has to be this way. But I mean, there is a core of hardcore wrestling fans, and I would include myself in that group, that we like wrestling. We've liked it ever since we can remember. It's just one of the things that we like to watch and to talk about, and we're probably going to watch it no matter what, you know. And we might not like it. We might bitch about it and say, oh, God, I can't believe they're using Bryan this way, blah, blah, blah. We're still going to watch the show, whether we like it or not. But not everybody is like that. And one of the reasons why, like, you know, they always love to talk about the Attitude Era and the Monday Night War era, and how wrestling was so huge back in the late 90s. One of the reasons why it was so huge was because their audience was so much bigger than just those hardcore wrestling fans. And if they want to attract that size of an audience again, and they want all these people to subscribe to their network and to watch their weekly shows, and they're going to need more than just those hardcore wrestling fans. And the problem is, the more they jerk Brian around, there's always going to be a core of hardcore wrestling fans that are just going to stick with him no matter what, because like you say, we're crack addicts. We're just going to watch the show no matter what because we can't really help ourselves. But the people that watch the show just casually, I mean, they're not going to stick around if they feel like they're being jerked around, or if the show gets boring to them, or if they feel disappointed too often by the results of the matches. They're going to leave. They're going to find something else to do and something else to watch. And the risk, and I think the risk is that when they keep blue-balling people about Daniel Bryan, they're going to piss off those casual fans, not just the hardcore fans, the people who are watching it because Daniel Bryan's an exciting, interesting, different kind of a guy, and we want to see him overcome adversity and win the title, and those people are going to catch on that that's not going to happen, and they're just going to be like, oh, okay, I'll fucking go watch CSI, and that's the danger. You can take the hardcore fans for granted because they're always going to be there. But,
yeah, I saw a video while I'm watching the network, which I thought was pretty damn good. Which was a kid, and he's standing in his bedroom, and he's like dressed up like Hulk Hogan, and it's like 1980 something, and he's hulking out and behind Hulk Hogan. But they follow this kid through almost 30 years of wrestling, and to the point where he has his own child who is a big fan of John Cena. But they literally every little stop that they make throughout this kid's life, it's not Hulk Hogan. It's like it's Bret Hart. It's Shawn Michaels. It's Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's John Cena. They show the progression of wrestling throughout this kid's history, which has maintained his fandom throughout his whole life, and that's why his kid is now a fan. And it's like you are aware of what makes a great fan, a lifetime fan of wrestling. You know what you have to do that. And right now, you have a ton of them. A shit ton of them.
Oh, yeah. Hollering
at you, saying, this is what you need to do, and we will fucking follow you to the end of the world. Just do this.
Yep. And, to talk about my own history as a wrestling fan for a minute, I know... I actually did have a period of about 3 or 4 years where I didn't watch it very much, and this was right, sort of, it ended right around the beginning of like the Attitude Era stuff, like in 97, 98 is when I came back into it and started watching again, like hardcore. And one of the things that brought me back as a fan was that Steve Austin was getting to be the top guy in WWF. And I remembered him as being a great worker, from back when I was 10 or 11 years old. I mean, I remembered stunning Steve Austin, who was always a heel, and he was always a great wrestler, but he was like the cocky heel, and he was like the TV champion in WCW and the U.S. champion, had a great tag team with Brian Pillman, had great matches with Ricky Steamboat, and, but he was like, he was always a mid-carder, but he was great. And then I turned on the TV one day in like 1997, and there's Steve Austin. And he looks different, and he talks different, and the gimmick is totally different, but it's the same guy. The guy that I respected as a wrestler back in the day has now become, about to become the top star in the business, and that brought me back in. I thought, oh, good for him. Hey, I really like that guy. Wow, it's great that, they're going with him. That brought me back in as a fan. And I know I can't have been the only one. I mean, obviously most of the people who were on like the Austin 316 bandwagon were going along with it because it was cool and it was the thing, and he was like the Hulk Hogan of the 90s. But there were a lot of us, for whom that Monday Night War period, and a lot of it was due to the NWO, but a lot of it was due to Steve Austin And us wrestling fans seeing that this was one of our guys, one of the guys that we admired, that we liked his work, and we always thought he had good matches, and now he's finally getting pushed to the level that he deserves, you know. And the same thing could happen, should happen with Daniel Bryan. And the longer they hold back, it's like the more they risk just missing that opportunity. They're lucky that the fans have stuck with him as long as they have, as much as they've jerked him around. And the fact that they're still in it, and there are still people chanting yes, and still so hot to see him win the title and go all the way, they should be grateful for that they haven't managed to fuck that up, and they should go for it. You know, like, just strike while the iron is still hot. I don't know why the iron is still hot. You would think it would have cooled off by now, as much water as they've thrown on it, but it's still hot, and they need to strike it, or they're going to lose it. You know, then Daniel Bryan, he's going to end up being just another guy on the show, and they're going to have Batista and Orton on the top of the card, and nobody's still going to give a shit.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's hard to say. Daniel Bryan is one of those guys that is a top-notch wrestler, and he's going to be loved no matter what. He's going to be loved by his hardcore fans that respect what he can do in that ring. And you have to wonder in the back of your mind if WWE recognizes that that you don't have to put a belt on him for the fans to love him, because they don't have a belt now and the fans love him. So we'll see.
And you know, you're absolutely right. You don't have to put a belt on a guy for him, you know. But I think the problem is that they've cock-teased people with him getting that belt so often that now the only way to pay it off is to give him the belt, you know. And it's like they've done this 2 or 3 times now. They did it with Cena. They've done it with Triple H and Orton, where like people have come out and basically said, the people want Daniel Bryan to win the title. Like, they've basically just come out and had people say that, and he still doesn't win the title.
Yeah, if you're a fan of the WWE on Facebook and you read any of the posts that, you know, every now and again very often, I shouldn't say every now and again, very often they make posts that will show up on your page, and if you read any of the comments, it's all CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk. Give up on CM Punk, okay? You know, until we see him walk back down that ramp, you need to just let that shit go. Yeah. All right? But Daniel Bryan's still there, so there's still hope. But that's where the mindset is. You know, the fans are screaming.
Oh, absolutely. I know. So let's move on to talk about Raw last night.
Yes, sir.
Because speaking of CM Punk, there were some very loud, noticeable CM Punk chants during that show. As well as some Daniel Bryan chants, but there were 2 or 3 times where they were just yelling CM Punk. And I noticed that's the only chant that the announcers never say shit about. You know, when they chant for, like, you know, they'll sometimes they'll chant Y2J, and they'll be like, oh, they're chanting for Chris Jericho. And of course they, you know, when they chant for Lawler, or when they chant for JBL, they always mention it, but they haven't said a word about the CM Punk chants. They don't mention that at all. They just put their heads down and wait for it to be over. Yeah, I thought Raw was a pretty good show. Never mind my misgivings about the direction of things. I mean, I thought overall it was a pretty good show. There was I thought a really good angle between the Wyatts and Cena, where until I looked it up and I saw you posted about it on the WWE Network fans Facebook group, I thought that Cena was legit injured.
I did too.
Until it finally came out, like much later, that it was all a work. I thought that he had really hurt himself.
Yeah, it came at an awkward point in the match where you didn't see anybody working the knee or anything. All of a sudden, he's grabbing the knee. It's like, that to me is a red flag for a real injury. So I tip my hat to WWE for making it look real. But God damn it, WWE. Injuries are nothing to fucking joke about, for fuck's sake. You know, you put up your fucking advisory saying, don't try this at home. So to fake an injury is just not cool.
I agree. I have to applaud them for making it seem real, but you're right. I was talking to my wife about this, because sometimes I'll like corner her and just start talking about wrestling, and you know, it's a really shitty thing to do. Anyone who has like a spouse who isn't into who isn't a wrestling fan, and you are, it's such a shitty thing to do, to like force them to hear you talk about wrestling. um, but I was talking about how like really since the Attitude Era, they've really gotten into the bad habit of doing these realistic injury angles, where sometimes they'll even have the ref make like the X sign when it's a worked injury. And like they used to be like, if the ref made the X sign, it was like an injured skier. Like they never did that if it was a work. If the ref made the cross sign with his hands, it meant like, oh shit, he's really hurt. Get somebody out here. And then they started doing that for worked injuries, and it was like, oh, come on. Like, everybody knows it's all part of a show. Like, everybody knows this is a work. You know, if you show us John Cena, like, getting put through a table and then carted out on a stretcher, like, we know that he's not really hurt. Right. So it's kind of shitty to trick people into thinking, like, oh, no, he's really hurt.
Yeah, you know? To me, who are you really tricking, WWE? Back in the day when Randy Savage bashed in Ricky Steamboat's esophagus with a ring bell, well, you know, there wasn't the fucking internet to disprove that he wasn't really hurt. It seemed legitimate. But nowadays, you fucking act like you hurt John Cena's knee. And what happens? Less than 24 hours later, websites report he's not really hurt. He never reported to a hospital. It's like you're doing it wrong.
Well, and the thing is, too, is like, I mean, doing an injury angle with Cena, there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's clear that, like, it's all part of the show. Because I thought when I was watching it, I was concerned that he was really hurt, but I also thought, you know, if this is a work, it's appropriate that they do this angle on the same show that they bring Hogan back, because this is like a classic Hulk Hogan angle. Where, you know, the big monster heel like hurts him, and he's hurt so bad, but he wants to keep fighting, and then he gets carted away, and then he has to come back. You know, I mean, that is such a classic Hogan story. I mean, they did that with Earthquake. They did that with when he fought Sid at WrestleMania 8, when he was like, "I'm going to retire, brother," you know, and then Sid was like, "Fuck you," and you know. Or no, it wasn't retirement. He was supposed to have the title match with Flair, but then Sid turned on him, and he was so mad at Sid that he gave up his title shot to fight Sid in a match. I don't know. I still don't understand that one. But
WrestleMania 8 and around that era, I tend to just it's a blank because the main events really weren't anything that
You know what though? It
had great players though. It had great players. God. But goddamn, they weren't playing them right.
I actually, WrestleMania 8 is one of my favorite shows. The main event, like, I just don't understand. I mean, you hear all kinds of like real life, like backstage explanations as to why they went with Hogan and Sid versus Hogan and Flair. You know, because like Hogan and Flair didn't draw when they did live events, or you know, Sid had a contract that said he got the WrestleMania main event. There were all kinds of like excuses as to why they didn't do Hogan versus Flair. But like even the in storyline explanation, it just never made any sense to me. You know, of like Hogan deciding he would rather fight Sid instead of fight Flair for the title. It's like, dude, fight Sid after you win the title. Like, don't give up your title shot. But yeah, so they did that Cena angle with the Wyatts. It was like a great Hogan angle. Hogan opened the show. Hulk Hogan's back in WWE, and I was a Hulkamaniac when I was little. I have like nostalgic memories of the like that first Hulkamania era. Started in WWF 84 through like 90, 91 when it finally sort of cooled down. So I mean, I understand why people are excited to see Hogan back in that company. You know, personally, I would like, you know, WrestleMania 30 to be it. You know, like put him out to pasture after this. I really don't need to see him on TV anymore. Yeah, he can't wrestle. You know, and he's really outlived his usefulness, I think. I mean, I understand why they brought him back for WrestleMania and for the WWE Network. And really, his promo was just like a commercial for the WWE Network.
Mm.
I mean, there's really no reason in terms of like story. There's no reason for him to be here other than, you know, they booked him and here he is, you know. But, you know, he came out and he cut an okay commercial promo for the WWE Network, and the fans stayed with him, you know. It was nice for him that even when it became obvious that he was just going to basically shill the network, that they stayed with him, you know. They didn't like if Triple H had done that, they'd be chanting for Daniel Bryan and CM Punk in 10 seconds. And with Hogan, they paid him that respect, you know, and just let him finish what he had to say before they played his music again and he walked off. So I don't know if they're going to do anything more with him I imagine they're going to give him something else to do between now and Mania. But last night was just the hard sell for the network.
Yeah, it would be nice to see Hogan probably do something. It's like I've never been a Hogan fan ever in my life. You know, I've always been that heel fan from the beginning when I saw Roddy Piper, because I grew up in a volatile environment. So it's like when I saw Roddy Piper get up in someone's face like Mr. T and tell him exactly what the fuck he thought of him, and not really care. You know, I don't care what the hell I said to you. I'm just gonna say it to you anyways because that's who I am. It's like he just kind of really hit home for me. So I think that's what started me on like a heel path. So Hulk Hogan didn't resonate with me, but when he came out last night, I honestly kind of almost had that moment like you're home.
Yeah.
Thankfully, you're home. You know, this is where you belong. This is where you need to end your long storied career. You know, and so I was glad for that. I'm glad he's back in the WWE.
Yeah, and I mean, he was in TNA for a while, and it just never really worked. Partially because he always seemed like he was bigger than the company.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think a big part of it, and this maybe is superficial, but I know it works on me, is the theme music. WWE is the only place where he can play Real American to come out. And those other theme songs that he's used, even when he was using like Jimi Hendrix in WCW and he was with the NWO, like it just doesn't feel right. You know? I mean, I guess you wouldn't want to use Real American if he was a heel. That's like a total babyface theme song. But I mean, it doesn't feel like Hulk Hogan unless he comes out to that music.
And it's amazing because that song, Real American, if you know your history of wrestling, wasn't originally written for Hulk Hogan. It was originally written for Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham.
Oh yeah.
But was given to Hulk Hogan as a theme song. So in case you're one of those youngins that didn't grow up in the business like I did, that's a lesson for you. That song that you heard on Monday night wasn't originally made for Hulk Hogan. So, but it has become a staple to Hulk Hogan's career, and that's what. And when you hear that song, you think Hulk Hogan.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, even the version they came up with when he moved to WCW in '94, American Made, which was clearly like a ripoff of Real American. Like it was Jimmy Hart trying to like rewrite the song to make it sound, make it sound close enough, but not so close that they would get sued. It's not the same, When Hogan comes out to Real American, I don't care how much of a cynical, bitter old wrestling smart mark you are. There's something that's like, it's like I'm 6 years old, and here comes Hulk Hogan. But then that wears off for me, in like 5 minutes, and I'm like, oh, what is Hogan doing? Like, maybe you know what always pisses me off about Hogan, and I know, and Hogan's not the only one who's ever done it. Lots of guys did it back in the day, but it was at WrestleMania 6 when, and he put Warrior over clean at WrestleMania 6, but he kicked out, like at the very moment that the 3 count happened. And guys used to do that, like, oh, he just barely beat me, and that always pissed me off. I mean, I was like, dude, just lay there. You don't have to kick out at the 3 count. Just make the guy look like $1 million. Make it look like he knocked you out or something. That just really bothers me that he wouldn't like just lay there and take the finish. But that's just my own personal horseshit. Like that's not.
Well, it's rough as a professional wrestling referee. I know that there have been a few occasions where I know behind the scenes how the match is supposed to go down, but for some reason during the course of the match, there's a pinfall, and the wrestler for some reason did not kick out by the time my hand hit down to 3, and I gotta play it off like I'm fucking stupid.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, no. He kicked out. I know my hand hit down for 3, but he kicked out just that last hair second. And I know what you mean. That drives me fucking crazy too, and I get irritated when that happens to me in the business.
Well, and it's just like the thing that it's like Hogan, putting him over, but not really putting him over.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and it seems like it's just for Hogan because they never really, in WWF anyway. I mean, they never had a rematch. The feud was over after that match. They both went off and did their separate things, and so it's like Hogan just doing that just for himself, just to be like, oh, he never really pinned me, brother. I kicked out right, or he pinned me just barely. I kicked out just a moment later. Like, come on, just fucking lay there, But anyway, so Hogan came back. I imagine he'll be around doing stuff every week. On Raw until we get to Mania, and then they'll probably have something for him to do, like when they had The Rock host it a few years ago. Maybe he'll get involved in a match, or like restart a match that had a shitty finish or something. They'll probably have something for him to do. But anyway, after that on Raw, there was the long-awaited rematch from the night before for everybody's favorite Elimination Chamber match, Batista versus Del Rio. Everybody was really happy that they got that match again.
Yeah.
And you actually, I saw you posted on the in the Facebook group about Batista's promo with Orton after the match. You didn't sound too impressed by Batista's promo.
No, I bashed the shit out of Batista. I mean, I do, as a man, I respect what you can do in the wrestling ring and what you have accomplished, but the fact is, your promos suck. You're just a one-dimensional type of wrestler. I posted that I am more excited in seeing your part in the Guardians of the Galaxy than I am about seeing you main event WrestleMania, and I'm a fucking wrestling mark.
Right. Yeah, I didn't think the promo was that bad, but I just don't. I mean, he was blown up after the match. You could tell he was really like while he was talking. I'm not sure. Like, why would you? I don't even know why they laid it out. Why they booked it that way? Like, why you? It's obvious to anyone who watches that he's still sort of getting his wind back, and he's going to be gassed after the match, and then you give him promo time like right after the match. And something's like, are you trying to make him look bad? But yeah, it wasn't a great promo. I didn't hate it, but it was just like, I just don't care about the match. I just don't care about the match. And I know that Batista was like, oh, he's doing the John Cena thing, where he's like, I don't care if they cheer me or they boo me. They can do whatever they want. But it doesn't make me care about the match. I mean, that's the point. Is I don't care what Batista thinks about people booing him or cheering him. I don't care about the match.
Yeah, it's like I paid money for this shit last night. Why would the hell I want to see it for free? It's over.
Yeah.
Let's move on. He's going to WrestleMania. Let's not feed him Alberto Del Rio again and make him look bad. I feel bad for Alberto.
Well, I feel bad for him too, and I feel bad for Alberto, like just within the universe of the story, because he's completely right. Like this feud he's having with Batista, he's completely in the right. He's been with the company all this time. He's wrestled every night. He's won all these titles. He won the Royal Rumble. He won the Money in the Bank. And then Batista just comes in out of nowhere and just gets the main event after winning one match and basically having everything handed to him. Like, yeah, Alberto is supposed to be the heel and Batista is supposed to be the babyface, even though he's kind of acting heelish. But Alberto's right. It's like, yeah, okay, he's the heel, but what's wrong about what he's saying? I mean, Batista did just kind of walk in, and they even made it obvious on camera that him and Triple H are buddies. Yeah. It's like, we're supposed to cheer for him? He'll beat Randy Orton at WrestleMania, and we're supposed to be happy about it? While Daniel Bryan is in some bullshit match with Triple H, like 3 matches down the card? We're supposed to be happy about this?
Yeah, here's the cardinal rule that you should use for all of wrestling. If you leave wrestling for an extended period of time, like Brock Lesnar, like Batista, when you decide that you want to come crawling back because what you did outside of wrestling just didn't compare to the fact what you were making in the WWE, you shouldn't get a top spot. You should go back to start. That's the way the business should work. Because while you were gone, while you left that void, someone else stepped up and filled that to keep this business going. Do you deserve that spot? Hell no.
And I was thinking today, and again, I'm going to get into like armchair booking here, which is best avoided, but I'm going to do it anyway. There was a way, I think, to bring Batista back and to have him be a real babyface, like right from the beginning, even though he's coming in on short notice and blah, blah, blah. If they would have put him against Triple H the first night, if they would have had, like, because, Triple H was hyping him coming in, like, for a month when they leaked that Batista was coming back, and they decided to just announce it, because I think it was originally supposed to be a surprise. They could have had Triple H come out and be like, hey, everybody, Batista's coming back. It's best for business. It's going to be huge. Former world champion, blah, 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 blah. They could have, like, had Triple H be all happy that Batista's coming back and have Triple H be the guy who introduces him to come back to the ring on that first Raw when he comes back. And then Batista, like, takes the microphone from Triple H and just gets in his ass and says, listen, I've been home for 4 years, and I've been watching the show, and I've been keeping up with what goes on around here, and the way you've been acting lately is bullshit. And I turned on Raw one day, like 3 months ago, and you had all the wrestlers standing up on the stage listening to you talk like it was a high school gymnasium assembly and blah, blah, blah. I mean, Batista could have come back in and been like the champion of the locker room and been like and come back in and said, all right, look, I know that the guys who are under contract here most of them are afraid to stand up to you or to say something or to go against your will because they don't want to lose their jobs, but I'm not going to stand for that. I'm back and I'm signed to a contract and you want to be back and here I am, and this authority shit is over, and just put him against Triple H right away and have him be the guy, like, really the role that CM Punk should have been doing, but that wasn't for whatever reason. Have Batista come in and be that guy, who said, this ends now. You're mistreating your employees. You're being a bad boss. You're pushing people around. You're screwing over the fans. Orton's a paper champion. Orton shouldn't even have the title, and do that. But instead, it's like they didn't do anything. The story of Batista coming back was, hey, Batista's back, and that was it.
Yeah, they thought the fact that he'd done some movies would probably get him over, but honestly,
he's not The Rock.
Yeah, you're not The Rock.
I mean, The Rock could come back in because The Rock is like a legitimately huge movie star now, and people remember really loving The Rock back in the day. The Rock could sort of get away with that, at least for a little while. I think people were kind of getting tired of The Rock by the time his last run was over. I mean, I think when Cena beat him at WrestleMania last year, everybody was like, okay, this is, thanks, Rock. I think he had kind of reached the end of his popularity there.
It's been real. It's been real.
But Batista's not The Rock. I mean, and to act like all we have to do is just bring him in and people will just bow down. It's like, no. I mean, I like Batista. I wanted him to come back and have a good run. I have nothing against Batista, but shit, don't just show him to me and go, here he is. Start cheering for him. No.
Yeah. I'm the opposite. I don't like those muscle-bound wrestlers. So, when Batista came back, I was kind of, oh, what did he do?
I know. I thought that some of his heel stuff toward the end of his last run was pretty good.
Right back.
Okay. I thought that some of Batista's heel stuff during his last run, before his 4-year hiatus, was pretty good. But I mean, to just bring the guy back in and then have everybody just be expected to, stand up and applaud just by the mere fact that he's there, just baffles me. And again, I know that I'm armchair booking, and that's it's a little hypocritical because I talk about it as something that should be avoided, and then I do it all the time. But welcome to the life of a wrestling fan. So when Doc comes back, we'll talk a little bit more about Raw. I was misinformed or mistaken when I talked last week. When I mentioned last week that that I was going to be able to watch the 3-hour Raw because of the network, I was wrong, because apparently the Raw replays on the network are going to be 30 days delayed. So
Yeah.
I'm still on the Hulu version, and one of the things that got cut out of the Hulu version for me was the Cesaro match, which sucks because I love Cesaro,
Oh my!
and I really like Big E, and I hear it was a good match.
Yeah, it was a really good
Uh,
match. Except for the aftermath, I thought, wow, it's like I was like, holy shit, Big E's hurt.
yeah, it looks
uh,
like there were some big spots in it.
Yeah, we were doing bets in the in my chat room, the WWE Network fans chat room, of how many swings that Cesaro would do in Big E, and my friend Mike Iser, he won the pool with 10, and I'm like, that actually makes perfect sense, because 10 is the perfect number. You shouldn't really do any more than 10. But Cesaro, after the match ended, the whole thing with Cesaro doing his finisher on Big E. I think the only thing that saved it is because it looked nasty at first, but as I watched it in slow motion, Big E did come down more on his shoulder, which probably could have saved his damn neck, honestly, because the referee checked on him and everything, and it happened so quick that your mind's eye sees that it was just kind of a bad move,
Yeah.
and you can see the referee check on him. But when I watched it in slow motion, Big E landed okay. He might be a little bruised, but the fact was, I was scared for him during that match. But yeah, an excellent match. Cesaro is proving himself time and time again, and they are literally really stepping up the split between the Real Americans and with Jack Swagger interfering in that match twice and costing Cesaro the match.
Yeah, it looks like that Real American split is definitely happening. And what I really hope is that they have something big for Cesaro at next year's WrestleMania. Because, clearly he's going to get, it's probably going to be him and Swagger at this year's WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be a good match. But it'll just be one of 6 or 7 undercard matches. But hopefully next year they'll have something really big for Cesaro, because he is so good and is really getting over with the crowd. And apparently, the company is really high on him too. Like, Cena likes him, and he got a standing ovation backstage apparently for that match he had with Cena last week. Hopefully they really have something planned for him, because they'd be crazy to waste him. He's so good. So yeah, they did. There was the Big E versus Cesaro match, and then there was the Cena versus Wyatt segment that we talked about already. That I thought was excellent, and I'm glad that Cena's not really hurt. Although it is kind of shitty that they they do realistic injury angles. And then there was Christian versus Sheamus. Not a bad match, but
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good match, honestly, between the two. I'm not really interested in Christian. I don't really want to see what he has to offer anymore. I think he's passé for me. I'm past Christian, but I honestly thought that Sheamus and Christian put out a pretty good matchup on Raw. There wasn't nothing I could complain about. It was good.
No, and Sheamus is good. I think Sheamus can go. Sheamus had decent matches last year or year before last, I guess now, with Big Show. And not everybody can have a good match with Big Show. And Sheamus had, they weren't like classics or anything, but they were a lot better than you would expect if you just got handed a piece of paper that said Sheamus and Big Show. You'd be like, oh, really? But they actually were pretty decent matches. I like Christian, but I'm kind of with you. It's obvious that he's sort of like, he's like the modern version of Tito Santana in the 90s, where it's obvious that he's not going anywhere. They're not doing anything with him, but he has a really good resume. He's like a former champion, and they can just keep him around to make other guys look good. But it's obvious that he's not getting one more shot on top. He's just kind of hanging around to put people over. Which is fine, but as we've talked about before, there are other people on the roster that they could also be doing that with. that might actually do a better job of it even than Christian. And it's kind of weird that, all these guys are just sitting backstage with nothing to do while Christian gets to be in the main event of pay-per-views and wrestle with main eventers and,
Yeah, I miss the days of superstars where they would take a wrestler and put him against a local jobber, and that's how they would elevate a wrestler's position in the business, because they would go out and stomp someone you didn't know. It would never hurt their career.
Yeah.
And you can't do that these days. It's like they still think they're in a Monday Night War, and they're not.
You know what? That is, to me, I agree. I think that's probably 75% of the problem with the whole product, is that they're still they're not. I mean, of course you should want good ratings for your show, and of course you should want people to buy your pay-per-views. And I mean, it's a business. They need to make money. They need to make a profit. I completely understand that. But it does seem like they're just as preoccupied with every single rating point now as they were when they were going head-to-head with Nitro. And it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, like, one of the reasons you read about, why they killed Daniel Bryan's push back in the fall was because, well, he didn't move the ratings. You're the only wrestling show. I mean, what do you expect? Like, 1 million more people are going to tune in because they heard some guy named Daniel Bryan is, like, being pushed on top? I mean, of course he didn't move the... John Cena doesn't move the ratings either. I mean, he moves them up or down a few points, but it's not... Look, the days of, like, Raw pulling, like, a 9 or a 10-point rating are fucking gone. Like, that's just never going to happen again. And
you're not crossing over into TV shows to I mean, you are doing movies, but they're all under your own banner. You're not crossing over into NASCAR anymore, which, I can thank all the NASCAR fans for fucking building up Bill Goldberg, who didn't deserve any kind of push.
Thanks, NASCAR fans.
Yeah, thanks, NASCAR fans. But, all those different companies that they actually were able to branch off to help them push certain superstars aren't there anymore. And same with the ratings, it's a different monster anymore, Back when Raw started, there weren't 1,000 different channels on my Dish Network.
Right.
To watch something different when you're boring the fuck out of me. And granted, you don't bore the fuck out of me. I will watch, regardless. I will watch. But I'm a different beast altogether. I'm a wrestling fan for life. I do it in my spare time. So what you have, I'm interested in because it's a learning process for me. But That's just me. Your average Joe, Steve, right there, he's never been in the wrestling business. So and like he said, he was out for 4 years. Me, I can never say that, but he's been out for 4 years. So that's what you do when your product becomes boring. You give the guy who isn't really as invested as I am in the business. You give them a second thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you're right. Yeah, I was, and I even I kind of drifted away a little bit a few years ago too. Not as much as I did. Before the Monday Night War stuff, before I got back in with Austin, but from like maybe 2007 to about 2010, I was only sort of paying attention with one ear. You know what I mean? Like I was just like, oh, okay. Like I didn't have to see Raw or SmackDown, or I didn't really watch the pay-per-views. It was just sort of like, oh, whatever, And then I sort of got back into it again. Really, I guess when Punk started. It was before the summer of Punk stuff, but it was when Punk was because I knew him from Ring of Honor and from indie stuff, and I was like, oh shit, CM Punk's in WWE, and I started paying more attention then. So after that on Raw, there was let's talk a little bit about the Daniel Bryan Triple H thing, because there was a backstage segment where Bryan comes into Triple H's office and Triple H basically does the patting him on the head thing, where he's like, I don't fight little guys like you. And
yeah, you're a B player.
Yeah, because I'm Triple H and I only fight A+ players, even though he was never an A+ player. I hate to tell Triple H, and somebody should say that on the show. I mean, I know Triple H is a heel and he's supposed to be like cocky and arrogant and think he's better than everybody, but nobody on the show ever comes out and says, "Dude, you weren't an A-plus player. You played with the A-plus players."
Yeah, you remember that hog match you did with Henry Godwin where you landed in the shit? Like everybody started at the bottom, but sometimes you rise up to the top. And
well, you know, I take nothing away from Triple H as a worker. I think he had some amazing matches. He has nothing to be ashamed of in terms of his history and his work ethic and all. I mean, give him all of that. Absolutely tremendous. But as Jim Cornette said, Triple H never drew any money. He just worked with the guys who were drawing the money. I mean, and you know, because look at the era when Triple H was like the top guy, when Austin and Rock were both gone, and when they were still sort of building Batista and Cena to be like the new top baby faces. That was not like a really great time for business. You know, the WWE wasn't exactly setting the world on fire with Triple H as the top star. I'm sorry, they just weren't. You know, the match quality, you can talk about whether or not the product was good, but I mean, it's not like a lot of people were watching compared to when Austin and Rock were around. So I just don't really get this perception that they're trying to create about Triple H, where, you know, he wasn't just like a really solid, important part of the show back in the day. Oh no, he was right up there with like Austin and Rock. No, I'm sorry, he wasn't. He just wasn't. Nobody was buying a ticket to see Triple H unless he was fighting Steve Austin or The Rock. That's how I remember it.
Yeah, the only reason you were buying a ticket maybe for Triple H is because he was part of DX, and that's Shawn Michaels.
Shawn Michaels, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's another thing.
Michaels. I used to love Shawn Michaels, but I don't like Shawn Michaels anymore. Although I watched on the network, and I have it on DVD. I watched the Greatest Rivalry between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. That was pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good documentary. It's a good interview with the two of them. Although I noticed that Shawn never quite really takes responsibility for anything.
That's like, true.
When Bret when Bret says, "Well, you know, Shawn, remember this and remember when you did this," and Shawn usually says, "I don't remember. I mean, I probably did it, but I don't remember."
Yeah, the stroke victim remembers everything, but you remember jack shit.
Well, I'll tell you what though. I believe that the stroke victim remembers everything. I don't think Bret forgets any of that shit. I think Bret, I mean, I think he's cool with it now, and him and Vince and Shawn have kind of like, I believe that they've made up, but I mean, I don't think he's ever going to forget that shit. I mean, Bret is going to hold on to that forever. I think that's just the way Bret is. Like, he feels like, you know, he wasn't treated properly, and he's just never going to let that go. You know, even if he'll come back to work and he'll, you know, come out on Raw and, you know, do everything that you're supposed to do. I still feel like when you hear him talk in interviews, especially when it's like not a WWE interview, he's still kind of pissed off about that.
Yeah,
you know?
He has hard feelings about it. You know, he almost cried during that interview when he was talking about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, because I think Bret's one of those guys, like people say, a lot of people say that Bret's like a mark for himself. And Kevin Nash has said that a bunch of times, that, you know, the problem with Bret is that he takes it too seriously, and he's just such a mark for himself, and he legitimately thought that he was the greatest and the show should have been all about him, and, you know, and I'm sure there's some truth to that, but you have to appreciate that was the dude's whole life. I mean, Kevin Nash, I'm a Nash fan too. I thought Nash was great in the role that he played. I mean, I would never confuse him with Ric Flair, but, you know, I have nothing against Kevin Nash. But he, you know, was a bouncer and a basketball player who came into wrestling relatively late in life. I mean, Bret Hart was fucking raised in it. Like, It was his whole life. So I can sort of maybe not excuse, but at least understand why someone like Bret Hart would take it that seriously and would be that upset when he felt like things weren't going the way they should. But anyway, that's a tangent we can spend a whole fucking week on.
I think we're diverting here.
Yeah. So anyway, so Daniel Bryan and Kane have a match on Raw. Bryan wins, beats him with the running knee, and then gets on the mic again and announces that what he wants and what the fans want is Bryan versus Triple H at WrestleMania, which is not what the fans want, but they went along with it anyway. and chanted yes, because I guess they figured that's the best they're going to get.
Yeah, they've kind of taken they kind of know that this is the way it's going. You know, you can't at this point take away Batista's WrestleMania shot. It's going to be hard to do that within a short amount of time that's available to you. So it looks like plans are going on as they're supposed to, and Daniel Bryan will call out Triple H in the next probably week or two, and he'll accept the match, and that's what you'll see at WrestleMania. And, yeah, like you said, it'll probably be the best match for WrestleMania because no one's got any stock. And I think Bray Wyatt and John Cena will do good at WrestleMania too. I think that'll be a good match.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
It is nice to see some of these guys like John Cena, Triple H. People have no interest in anymore. Wrestle some of the newer guys, which I do have interest in, which will bring me into the matchup. So I think that's smart.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I have more trust in Cena for this sort of thing than I do Triple H. I feel like even if Cena wins the match, which I wouldn't be surprised if Cena won the Bray Wyatt match. I mean, I think, although if Bray won, that'd be awesome. Mm-hmm. But I think Cena will make him look good in losing. Like, I think Cena is, cause the same thing he did with Daniel Bryan when they had their match at SummerSlam. Like, Cena, I think, has his head screwed on right and understands the importance of making new stars. And I've said on one of our shows before, like, if I were John Cena, I would be one of the most irritated guys in the company that they've fucked around Daniel Bryan the way they have, because I would be like, well, why the fuck did I put him over at SummerSlam? Mm-hmm. You know, why did I lay down and make him look like $1 million, and now look at him? You fucked him around for 6 months. Like, why did I even lay down for the guy? You know, that's what I would think if I were Cena, because Cena's never really seemed like he's had a problem putting people over and making people look good. Triple H, when he wants to, is great at that. You know, but if he comes up with an excuse why he doesn't want to do it, well, then fucking forget it. Mm-hmm. But so, yeah, it looks like we're getting Triple H and Bryan at WrestleMania. Then there was the Divas match, Summer Rae versus Emma, which I thought was all right. I think I like Emma. I didn't think it was a great match, but it wasn't that long. And they had pretty much the same match they had on NXT last week. Same finish and everything with the Emma lock and the tap out. So it wasn't bad. And Santino had a funny spot at ringside, because Fandango and Santino were both at ringside, and there was a spot where Summer was like beating up on Emma near the ropes, and she yells at Santino. She's like, "Why don't you help her now, Santino?" And Santino says, "I can't help her. She would be disqualified." And I thought that was really funny. And then we go to what was next?
The Usos versus the Outlaws.
Yeah, and that was non-title.
Yeah, and it was super quick. I don't know what they did to fuck up timing. For the show that night, but for some reason you ran that match too quick, and I think as a fan I deserved a little bit longer when it came to the Usos and the Outlaws. I think they could have probably positioned themselves into a pretty good match that night, but you didn't give that to me.
Yeah, because there's no reason why it couldn't be a great match. I mean, especially with the Usos. They're a really exciting, capable team. Then was Roman Reigns versus Bray Wyatt one-on-one, which it really was mostly used, I thought, to build to the Shield breakup, because Dean Ambrose ended up, the finish was that Dean Ambrose ran in and attacked Bray Wyatt and got Roman disqualified. So I guess they're going to keep the Shield and Wyatt stuff going a little bit, at least to get them to the Shield breakup, which is fine.
Yeah, I think I'm more comfortable seeing a heel faction break up another heel faction than I am with just it happening naturally. It's like this war's coming down on Shield, and the Shield seeing a little bit differently, and Dean Ambrose is a little bit annoyed by that, and it's causing a big, huge rift between those guys. I'm actually more invested in seeing it happen that way. I noticed Dean Ambrose was wearing just slightly different attire last night on Raw too.
Yeah,
it was different than the other two.
Yeah, and it seems like we were talking a few weeks ago that it seemed like Roman was going to be the one to break off, but now it seems like they're going to break Dean off, and that like sort of Seth and Roman were more on the same side, and they were both kind of asking Dean like, "What happened to you? Where were you at?" You know, and then Dean was the guy who cost him the match. So who knows?
Well,
But,
if you're going to separate the Shield, I think it's best to keep Dean Ambrose as a heel. I think he would be great in that position. Roman Reigns obviously is going to be a good guy, but what do you do with Seth Rollins? That's who I felt bad about at the beginning, was like, what do you do with Seth Rollins? I think the WWE has kind of woke up to that, and think if we keep him as at least as siding with Roman Reigns, maybe some of that fan reaction that Roman Reigns is gaining will rub off on Seth Rollins when we finally do the split, and then that way we can at least somehow save his career and not have him fall into obscurity.
Not having become the Marty Jannetty of the Shield. And then after that was the main event interview with Brock and the long-awaited return of The Undertaker. I thought Heyman's promo up till The Undertaker came out was actually really excellent, as it usually is. Heyman usually cuts a good promo. And I thought that his reasoning, I thought the whole thing about, Brock Lesnar doesn't take a consolation prize, I thought that whole thing was great. Again, because like we were talking about with what Alberto says to Batista, because it's true. Like that's basically what the company has done to the fans, is say, no. You're going to get Orton and Batista, okay? That's just what's going to happen. But since you like Daniel Bryan so much, here, he can wrestle Triple H, And, since you like Brock so much, here, Brock can wrestle The Undertaker. There. Are you happy? And, of course, nobody's happy. But it's the exact same thing. It's a consolation prize.
Yeah, the thing about Brock and Undertaker is you missed the mark on that. There were years ago when Brock Lesnar was in the UFC and Undertaker attended a UFC venue, and they got kind of up in each other's face a little bit. Everybody misconstrued what was going on there. But it was a good story. It was a really good story and crossover between UFC and WWE. The fact is, now they're both in WWE. It's many years later, and you've missed the mark on that. I don't know if anybody's paying attention to that past storyline between Undertaker and Brock, but I don't think anybody cares. To me, I've always said, and this is just wishful thinking, that Undertaker, you've been around for so long. You're not as fully dedicated as a normal wrestler would. You just come back for WrestleMania, and you collect a paycheck. God, we're so sick of that. So, you, my friend, have Brock this year.
Have fun with that.
Yeah, good luck, and we'll see you never. We'll induct you into the Hall of Fame next year.
Right. Have fun having a stiff as hell match with Brock Lesnar.
I'm sorry, but it's in the Constitution about cruel and unusual punishment, and that's just not right.
Yeah. He really likes swinging those chairs lately, too, so have fun with that. Have fun taking 20 chair shots to your fucking back. It was a good segment. It's basically the same Undertaker segment they've done the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Where Taker just comes out as a surprise and points at the WrestleMania sign, and, Triple H or CM Punk or Brock Lesnar just goes, yeah, let's do it, I thought that Brock, at first I was afraid that they were going to go too far with Brock acting afraid of The Undertaker, but he kind of brought that back at the end. Like, he was the one who signed the contract, and he got up in Undertaker's face. But when Undertaker was coming out, I felt like Brock was a little too, impressed by the entrance. Because to me, if I'm producing Brock Lesnar, I'm going to have him just not be impressed by anything.
Yeah.
Undertaker comes out and have Brock just, talking to Heyman and laughing and being like, look at this.
Undertaker, you're really feeding me this guy? Come on. What is he, older than dirt? I'm going to kill him.
Right, exactly. That's what I would have done. Because Taker's going to win the match. So at least have Brock be the guy who just isn't impressed at all. It's just like, yeah, look, I beat this dude 10 years ago. I'm going to kill this guy now.
Which I think is a mistake, because if you have Brock Lesnar lose that match, you have had, since you brought Brock Lesnar back, you have had that man lose too many matches.
I agree.
You're regulating him really to a Mark Henry type character, which is bullshit. You have a gold mine on your hand, and you're not actually even treating it right. He's a monster. He should be treated as a monster.
I agree completely.
Fucking end the streak. Do it. End the streak.
Boy, how much? I mean, that would be awesome if they did that.
It would be.
I don't think that they're going to do that. I think, but one of the reasons why I was kind of hoping that they would have Brock be more, or be less impressed by the Undertaker last night was because really the only story that they can tell with the streak is, is this going to be the year that it ends? And one of the things they've done really well with booking those Undertaker matches at WrestleMania is they've done a really good job at convincing the crowd that was going to be it. They get those near falls in where like Undertaker almost goes down, but he kicks out at the last second, and or like the other guy will kick out of the tombstone, and Taker will have that moment of like, oh my God, and you think like, oh shit, is this going to be it? Are they finally going to end the streak? And then they never do because they're not going to end the streak, but a great way to plant that seed would have been to have Brock just fucking murder him. And not be scared and not be like, oh no, it's Undertaker. Undertaker gets in the ring, just have Brock fucking flip the table over and kill him, and have that be the end of Raw. Undertaker just laying there on his ass, and Brock just walking up the ramp like it's just another day at the office. I mean, that would really make me interested in an Undertaker Brock match. But Undertaker has to be, the most impressive thing that anybody's ever seen, and. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be a good match or not. I mean, Taker, even for his age and his limitations, his WrestleMania matches the last few years have been really strong. So, I don't know, but...
you got to give credit to who's wrestling, too, that could carry him. And
absolutely.
He's come back in enough time to work out some type of program with that wrestler so that they can perform a good matchup at WrestleMania. Brock's a wild card. Honestly, he is a wild card. And with that said, I mean, I'm interested in seeing the match as much as I'm not interested in seeing this matchup. Yeah, I want to see how it goes down.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's like I kind of am afraid it's going to be a train wreck, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, let's see how many people die in the train wreck.
Right.
So let's. That was Raw. That was the Elimination Chamber. We've gotten all that out of the way. I want to spend a few minutes talking about the WWE Network, but first we want to do another Legend of the Week, and this will be our last show of February and of Black History Month. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would be cool for our last Black History Month legend to be one of my favorite wrestlers, period, and definitely one of my favorite African American wrestlers, Bad News Allen.
Woo!
Who also known as Bad News Brown,
yes.
When he worked in WWF. But Doc, did you have anything on Bad News Allen?
Oh, well, you're talking about Bad News. You're talking about someone who was ignorant to the fact that he was Bad News Allen, because I've always known him. At that point the internet wasn't around. I'm an old school kind of guy. So when you do stuff in like countries that are very far away from me, I'm just completely unaware of that. So I've always known him as Bad News Brown until I did my research on him. But yeah, you're talking about a former man that knows judo.
Yeah.
He has been in the Olympics. He has won countless number of titles. He has performed in WWE. The man himself he was the kind of guy that never he was almost like your old school Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? I mean, he didn't care if you were a good guy, he didn't care if you were a bad guy. He was a loner, and you dug that about Bad News Brown. He didn't need anybody around him to show how much of a badass he was. Unfortunately, in the WWE, he never captured any titles, and I think that was a shame. Because he has certainly captured enough titles, like in the NWA, Florida's NWA. He's captured let me read down the list here. He's been a gold medal, 1967 gold medalist in heavyweight, 1975 gold medalist in heavyweight. He's been a 1976 bronze medalist in heavyweight. He's been an NWA Florida Bahamian champion. He's been an NWA Florida Heavyweight champion. He's been an NWA Southern Heavyweight champion. He's been NWA Americans Tag Team champion with Leroy Brown and Victoria Rivera. He's been an NWA Polynesian Pacific Heavyweight champion. He's been a Stampede North American Heavyweight champion, ICW Heavyweight champion, and IWA Heavyweight champion. The man has won his fair share of belts in his career and deserves to be honored as a professional on what we call Wrestling Black History Month.
Yeah, absolutely. He was one of the greats. And it's really, yeah, what you point out about how he was a lot like Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if Austin was thinking of Bad News Brown when he came up with, the Stone Cold persona, but yeah, there are a lot of parallels between those two. I mean, Bad News Brown walked out on his Survivor Series team 2 years in a row.
Yes.
2 Survivor Series in a row, he walked out on his team. I mean, that's like, he also, I think, other than that, I think probably he's best known in the WWF for his feud with Roddy Piper, and that's mostly known because Piper came to the ring for their WrestleMania 6 match in blackface.
Very racist. Very racist.
Half blackface. But one of my favorite Bad News Brown moments from his WWF years was when he and Bret Hart were the last 2 wrestlers in a battle royal that they held at WrestleMania 4.
Yes.
Which is great. If you know, it was a great angle just in itself. They raised their arms together like they were going to be the co-winners, and then Bad News turns on him. But then that was cool for that. That was just an awesome moment in the show. And also, Bret and Bad News had wrestled years before that in Stampede, because before he came to the WWF, I think he was probably most known to wrestling fans for his work as Bad News Allen in Stampede in Calgary. And he and Bret had feuded for the North American title, which was the top belt in that promotion for a long time, and had some really classic matches over that North American title. And then here they are both in the WWF and, turning on each other in this battle royal. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, if you look him up, he contributes his training to Antonio Inoki and Stu Hart. So that's where he got the majority of his wrestling training from. Anybody that came out of that dungeon is no one to mess with.
Yeah, absolutely. And and he was a good interview. He was good on the microphone. Just a legend all around.
Yeah, I think the only thing that really was against him was he was in the WWE at a time when they really didn't have much stock in putting a belt on a black man.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And also, I just think he was not. I think in terms of his personality, he just wasn't. He was booked as his wrestling gimmick was that he was a loner, but I think he was kind of like that in real life too. Like, he knew what he could do, he knew what he wanted to do, and I think he had a very strong idea of how he should best be used on the show. And if the company had a different idea, he was just like, oh, well, the hell with you. He wasn't really like a cooperative. He certainly wasn't like a John Cena type of like, yeah, let's do it. He was much more of a, okay, well, if you're going to do that, yeah, I guess I'll do that. Well,
according to him, he left it back in 1990. He was doing a little run with Hulk Hogan for the WWE Championship.
Yeah. And
he had left the business, or at least left WWF at the time. He worked for several independents after that, but he left the WWF because he says they broke a promise to make him the first ever black champion. That's according to him.
Yeah, and who knows if that's true or not, but I mean, he would have been a great one. I mean, he was a great heel. He was legitimately tough. He was credible in the ring. I mean, if they did want to, make a statement and make someone their first African American champion in the 90s, Bad News was the guy. And he would have been a great heel champion because he was a badass. And whoever finally beat him for the belt, that could have been something worth seeing.
WrestleMania 4 is probably my best memory for Bad News Brown because WrestleMania 4 is still to today my my favorite WrestleMania. I loved WrestleMania 4, and it's just that's just one of the moments will always remember because I've watched the pay-per-view I don't know how many times. I love the Grand Tournament, and I thought Brett running in and breaking up the trophy afterwards was one of those great moments.
I like WrestleMania 4 too. I think among wrestling fans, among like smart internet wrestling fans, WrestleMania 4 has kind of a shitty reputation because it's so long and a lot of the matches aren't like classic matches. But I'm with you. I thought the tournament was cool. The bit with Brett and Bad News at the end of the Battle Royal was cool. Savage winning the title at the end was a great finish to the show. And it's one of my favorite shows too. I mean, sometimes the thing about being an internet wrestling fan is that sometimes we get so caught up in like things like work rate and, is this like a great 5-star match? And there's nothing wrong with watching a show and just appreciating like the flow of the show and the storytelling. And I mean, Macho Man winning the title at the end of that tournament is just one of my favorite moments. And all my wrestling fans.
Yeah, even if Hogan had his hand in it, I don't care. And the belt got around Macho Man, and God damn it, I was happy.
Exactly. It's like, It's one of those things where like, Hogan was part of it, but the fact is the guy who deserved to have the belt got it. The best wrestler in the company at the time, I think, probably was Macho Man. Oh, if you consider everything, not interview skills and how over he was with the crowd and wrestling skill. I mean, Macho was just so great. The guy who should have been the champion, the guy who should have won the tournament, and it was just awesome.
Well, the story goes for WrestleMania 4 that Ted DiBiase was originally supposed to win WrestleMania 4.
I think DiBiase said that.
Yeah, but Honky Tonk Man. It all comes down to Honky Tonk Man not wanting to lose his Intercontinental title to the Macho Man.
Yeah.
And that's why Macho Man got that push up to the world title because Honky Tonk Man was just being a prick about it.
Yeah, I've heard that story. Yeah, and isn't it interesting to think of how different? I mean, imagine if that show had ended with DiBiase winning the title.
I would have loved that too.
I mean, I would have loved it too because I love $1 Million Man. I thought DiBiase was one of the best heels ever as the $1 Million Man. But I mean, when I think about what a feel-good moment that was to see Savage win, and then for DiBiase, it's weird to think of like alternate history. Like I mean, it would have been nice for DiBiase to win the title. That's kind of like one of the shitty things about Hogan being champion all those years. It was great for business for a while, but the problem was you have this 5-year stretch where like one guy held the title, and you have all these incredible wrestlers working underneath him who just never got a shot.
Right.
Who probably should have in another company. I mean, God, DiBiase would have been a champion. Maybe Steamboat would have been a champion. I mean, because Steamboat went to NWA and won the title like within a year. You just think of all these alternate histories. Like if Hogan hadn't been there, think of all the guys who would have had runs with the belt. Well, let's get ready and wrap up here. But before we do, I want to spend a few minutes at least talking about the WWE Network.
My new drug.
Yes. Speaking of wrestling as crack and wrestling fans as crack addicts, I don't know. I'm pleased with it so far.
Yeah, me too.
Well, let me ask you. We talked a little bit already. I know you watched some of the scheduled programming that they air. Have you watched any of the stuff from the vault, like an old pay-per-view or anything yet? Or
today I spent time watching the very first ECW pay-per-view, which honestly I rented that on pay-per-view back in the day, but I wanted to rewatch that three-way match between. Actually, I wanted to watch the tag match between the Dudley Boys versus Perry Saturn and John Kronos. I thought that was a really good match, even though the Dudley Boys pretty much got jobbed out in that matchup. Then you got the main event, which was Terry Funk. The three-way match with Terry Funk, the Sandman. Ugh. And Stevie Ray. Much love for Stevie Ray. I'll give you that. And much love for Terry Funk as well. Which the winner of that match got the title shot against Raven, I believe was champion at the time. So other than that, I've been sticking to the regular programming, just letting that run. I started watching the WWE Network when I came home from work yesterday, which was about 12:30. I officially signed up and started running it. And it ran till about 9 a.m. this morning.
Yeah, if After I got through the sign up process, I posted a Facebook status that basically said, "Nice knowing y'all. You'll never see me again." And
Exactly.
and honestly, if I didn't have to do YouTube stuff, if I didn't have to write and make videos to put up on my YouTube channel, I would be like, that would be the truth. Like I would still be sitting here watching it, just from yesterday morning. I haven't had a chance to watch too much of the old stuff yet, but yesterday, the first and so far the only thing I've watched from like the pay-per-view library is I watched the first Starrcade from 1983.
Nice.
And I've seen a lot of those matches just on collections and stuff, but I had never sat down and watched the whole show from start to finish. And that is a really good show. The top three matches are probably the ones that people are the most familiar with. It's the chain match with Greg Valentine versus Roddy Piper, and then the tag title match with Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat versus the Briscoes. That's a really great tag team match. And then the main event, of course, is the cage match with Harley Race and Ric Flair. And probably, if you're a wrestling fan, you've probably seen those matches at least once, or at least heard about them or know about them. But that whole show is really strong, and none of the other matches are quite as good in terms of work as those top three matches. But it's just such a cool show. That was such a super card of the NWA back in the day. If you're like an old school wrestling fan and you missed the days of the NWA and the territories, I mean, fucking Carlos Colon and Abdullah the Butcher is a match on that show, which nobody outside of Puerto Rico probably even cared about, but it was on the show in North Carolina, because it was an NWA show and they tried to include talent from other territories. There was what was the TV title match? I can't remember what the TV title match was, but there was a TV title match and the challenger was Jimmy Valiant, but under the hood as Charlie Brown from Out of Town.
Yep.
And that was so cool. It's like, there were so many tag team matches. There was like Mark Lewin and Kevin Sullivan were on a tag team match. Just such a great old school wrestling show, and I'm really glad that I watched it. I had not seen it from start to finish ever before, and it's a really strong show.
See, that's what's nice about the WWE Network. It's like I spent time watching old ECW stuff, and you spent time watching old Starrcade stuff. It's like it's like saying we were on at the same time, but we chose and picked what we really wanted to watch. I mean, it is crazy. Although Vince McMahon came on and he's like, we're offering something new, which, if you haven't been paying attention, Vince, there's Hulu and all that stuff.
Right.
So it's not really new.
It's not that new, but okay.
But if you're a wrestling fan, if you are a true-blooded wrestling fan, the WWE Network is a cream drain.
Absolutely.
It is absolutely awesome. And this week they're doing their free trial, and they have some glitches, and like I had posted in a video, it's not, don't get too upset, even the Affordable Care Act had its own glitches, and we're talking about something that was really involved within the confines of America. WWE is a worldwide conglomerate, so they literally had an overload. I signed on this morning, and things weren't working up to par, even on my computer, but they put out a press notice saying it should all be fixed by 6 p.m. It's sluggish on my phone. It's unrecognizable on my fucking Xbox. For some reason, everybody's having that problem. They cannot sign into their Xbox to get the WWE Network on there, and hopefully that will be fixed. I'm not too concerned with it because I have a sling box, and I'll just sling my computer right over to my TV. I don't really give a shit. So I'm not dependent upon that. Also, my TV is a smart TV, so we're good there too. So I have all different types of avenues.
Yeah. That's one of the smart things. That's one of the smart things that they did with the rollout of it is they made it available on like every platform you can think of. I think, this is a huge gamble for this company. I mean, the break even number is 1 million subscribers this year. Like that's just to break even. So I think they really wanted to make it available like everywhere you can possibly think of to watch it, to get every last subscription out of it, because this is a big gamble. I mean, I remember when they released a documentary a couple years ago about the history of WrestleMania, and one of the big points that they hit like early in that documentary was how much of a gamble WrestleMania 1 was, how they had so much money invested in it that if they didn't break even, at least break even on the first WrestleMania, that they were going to be in real big trouble. And this is like another one of those situations where if they don't get their baseline of 1 million subscribers this year. I mean, yeah, they've done stuff that lost money before. Their movie division has never made a dime.
XFL,
XFL, the WBF. I mean, they've done shit that has lost money before. But
hey, we got Lex Luger out of the WBF.
That's true.
At least.
That's true. The narcissist.
But let me just say this, people. I think that the WWE Network, if it hasn't done it already, and I think the cable companies are really starting to stand up and pay attention to what's going on. Are you strapped to like Dish Network, to DirecTV, to your local cable company, and you have to suffer from packages that are filled with like 20 channels you don't ever watch at all, just so you can watch that one channel you love? It's like, I'm hoping that this actually changes how we watch TV, and even the cable companies that are out there will change that up too, because I want to watch what I want to watch. I don't want to watch shit you have forced me to pay for that I will never watch. I think that's what WWE Network's all about. They're giving you what you want to see, when you want to see it, for a low price, and it's well worth it. I'm already planning my WrestleMania party.
Yeah. If you're a wrestling fan, I mean, there's really no reason not to get it. If you can afford $10 a month, there's no reason not to get it if you're a wrestling fan, because it is just the classic pay-per-views alone would be worth it. I mean, and plus the new pay-per-views that come out, and the original content, and replaying like some of the DVD documentaries like they did they've done already with the Brett versus Shawn documentary. I mean, it's just such a great value. And I mean, the one thing that Vince is right about in terms of doing something new is, I mean, this is the first time that I can think of on such a big scale where a company, where a service like this has been launched by one content provider. I mean, Netflix is movies that are licensed from all sorts of companies. WWE Network is like Netflix, but it's just for this one type of show. And it, like, to your point about the cable company, it's like it's one company, one entertainment company that makes a very particular type of TV show, saying, you know what, we're just going to sell this shit directly to the people ourselves. We're not going to fuck with the cable company. We're not going to worry about the network license to air the show. We're just going to, you know what, if you guys don't want to pay us what we want, we'll just do it ourselves. And that could be, like, if this does turn out to be a really big success, that could be a big deal for the business outside of just the wrestling business. So who knows? I mean, this might actually turn out to be one of the most important things Vince has ever done.
Yeah, according to reports, NBC and WWE did not reach an agreement on Raw and SmackDown to continue on USA and Sci-Fi. So that should be interesting to see where that goes. The contract will be up here in a couple months, and then they're free to pretty much sell it to whoever wants it. But I think it'd be smart to just put it on the network.
Yeah, I kind of think they've got that in their back pocket. I mean, because really, that could be a good negotiating tactic. They walk in and they say, okay, here's how much we want for you guys to continue airing our show. Oh, you don't want to give us that? Okay, we'll just put it on our network for free. I mean, and who knows? Maybe that would get a few more subscriptions just by that. But who knows? The numbers so far seem really good. They said that, I think you posted something on the WWE Network group, right? That, like, it was the company that runs it, the MLBA, said that it was like the highest demand they've ever had for a new service. And
ever.
I mean, so that's good.
Yeah, it was overloaded yesterday, so everybody that is complaining, it's funny because I actually posted it on Facebook yesterday. It's like everybody's reassuring their friends that WWE will work the kinks out to the WWE Network. Well, right. I got your kinks right here. I posted a kinks video. Be patient.
Yeah,
it's all new, and you can't really predict what you're going to get until you get it. So they got to roll with their punches, and they're doing a pretty good job of that.
I think so too. It took me a little while to sign up yesterday. I tried to sign up starting around 10,
Mm-hmm.
and it took me a few tries to actually successfully sign up. But once I did, everything worked. I mean, all right, like you say, there's always going to be problems with a rollout like that. Sometimes when I watch it on my computer, like if I'm watching a show, like it'll freeze and I'll have to reload and kind of skip ahead to where I was. But that's, I'm still able to watch the whole show. And for some reason, when I watch it on my Roku, it plays just fine. Like I haven't had any problem with that at all. But
Yeah, that's getting the best results right now. You said Roku, right?
yeah, Roku.
Yeah. That's actually getting out of all the platforms the best results for the WWE Network is the Roku.
Well, that's good because that's where I'm going to watch most of it. Well, listen, we've gone. This is, I think, by far our longest one of these shows yet. So let's wrap this up. We'll be back to do this again next week. Now we're officially on the road to WrestleMania. And we've got like 6 weeks to go. So hopefully they've got some ideas for what to do between now and then. So it'll be interesting. Raw next week will be interesting. It's actually a really good time of year to be a wrestling fan.
Sure.
Because you've got the build to the biggest show, and everybody kind of brings their A game. And even though the Daniel Bryan Triple H stuff isn't really lighting my world on fire, I mean, the Shield thing is interesting. The Cena versus Wyatt's thing, I think, could potentially be interesting. Undertaker versus Brock, hopefully, will at least be an interesting train wreck.
And the biggest plus is you only have to spend $9.99.
Yeah, you subscribe to the network and you basically get the show for free. So if WrestleMania turns out to be shit, oh well.
Yeah,
I'll just go watch.
It's worth it for $10. What the hell?
If you don't like it, then just click over to the tape library and watch WrestleMania, whatever your favorite one is.
Yeah.
It's a great deal. They really should be paying us to do this. It sounds like we're like shilling for this network. I haven't seen a dime from Vince.
I'll send this over to Triple H.
Yeah. Tell him to send a check and make sure to put Brian over at Mania. Well, anyway, let's get out of here. And I guess I will see you next week to do this all over again, Doc, my friend.
Yes, sir. I'll be around.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next week.
Take care, guys. Eat bacon.